Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be discussing what I think is potentially, if not the most important season, one of the most important seasons in Michigan football. Now, I know I'm probably going to be overdoing it with these videos in the last few days and coming forward, but I just wanted to really emphasize how important this potential upcoming season is. We've had a lot of struggles in years past, we being Michigan people, Michigan fans, a majority of my life. I was born in the early 2000s. It's been a very, very long struggle for us. You know, growing up through school, Michigan State doing really well against us, not even having a chance against Ohio State, beating Penn State every once in a while, fighting it back and forth with Notre Dame. That was it. And it was Michigan was you just lose your rivals. You'd expect and you'd get okay with the idea of 3 to 5 losses a season, and it was just tough. And the people before us, the fans, whether it be your parents, your grandparents, in my case, they instilled this idea of a Michigan man. They talked about what it was to be a Michigan man, and how you got to do your best in all aspects of life and all that stuff. And it's all about winning and determination. And you see guys like Tom Brady lighting it up in the league, and you're like, what really happened to this program? And through trial and tribulation, Brady Hoke got pretty close. Lloyd Carr did his thing. He got pretty close. Jim Harbaugh had some major struggles. People, including myself, called for him to be fired. And then he hired some very elite coordinators, got an awesome quarterback, obviously, in J.J. McCarthy, and then everything turned around. You kind of almost circle that what if we went out speech from Cade McNamara is kind of like the turning point in basically Michigan's trajectory. It's kind of like we were really good in the early 1900s. It was like kind of Michigan's vibe for a long time, and now they're a national perennial powerhouse up until last year. So obviously there was a little bit of recruiting issues, whether that be due to legal issues and or other things going on in the Michigan program. There was obviously a huge hole at quarterback. Obviously, when you're starting Jack Tuttle, who was older than me, and then you have Davis Warren, Alex Orji, and Jaden Davis. Like, no disrespect, that's just not the level of athlete and or quarterback that you want at University of Michigan. And Davis Warren is a legend for clearly what he ended up doing at the end of the season, but they just weren't to that standard of Michigan quarterback. I mean, granted, Cade McNamara wasn't either, but they kind of galvanized around it and made it happen. So, the end of the Harbaugh era was unreal. You expected to win every game. We went into that final season. People like me were saying on social media and everyone they saw, Michigan was in the national championship, 15-0. See you in Houston. Said it for a long time. You adapted the Michigan versus everybody mantra, and it was just it was almost bliss. It was almost like a fever dream, really, of a couple seasons. You had a blip there with the Georgia and TCU things, but I mean, overall, it was just heaven. That final season was incredible, despite what the media and rival fans and Tony Petitti tried to do and ruin it with the fake, sham, fraudulent investigation of cheating. Other than that, it was great. And then you got to last year, and it was an absolute debacle. I was at the Texas game, murder scene. Who else? Washington, Illinois, Indiana. It's Oregon. It's like, look, dude, you're a Michigan. Why are you losing to Illinois, Indiana, and even Washington? Like, they were in a very similar situation to Michigan, and they bounced back better than the mighty Michigan. What the hell is going on? Obviously, first-time head coach Sherrone Moore, crazy first-time, I guess, college coordinator Wink Martindale. I don't even want to name our offensive coordinator. How much of a debacle that nonsense was, Kirk Campbell. But then now you bring in a guy in Chip Lindsey, and you bring in the potential savior of Michigan football from a bad year, Bryce Underwood. And you bring in other high-level guys, Andrew Babalola, Ty Haywood, these high-level 5-star guys, and then you've got Michigan culture guys, Eli Owens, he's a good guy that's like, hey, next Max Bredesen, like I'll do it. Him, and obviously Jalen Hoffman kind of came out of nowhere. He was on the team, but you have that Michigan man mentality is there. Avery Cock, Jatavion Sanders, Shamari Earls. You're bringing in these high-level guys. Bobby Kanka. I'm just trying to think of it off my head. Andrew Marsh. I know I'm forgetting a few. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head of guys that are coming in, and they're all doing their thing. Jasper Parker, another running back. Donovan Jackson. He's doing his things well. And you bring in this strong class of guys, and led by Bryce Underwood, clearly, and it's like, we're going to do this thing. We're going to turn Michigan back around. It's not the worst situation to turn around from 8-5, beating Ohio State, beating Alabama at the end of the year, but that middle stretch was debacle, and I think everyone in Michigan fan knew about it. I mean, half my friends tuned out, and they were like, "I'm not doing this anymore." So, um, you're now on this brink of, are we back to 4, 5, 3 wins? Not competing for championships, Big Ten titles. You're beating Ohio State every year. That's awesome. Don't get me wrong, but that's a pretty low goal on the grand scheme of things. You want to be winning these conferences and winning the titles, obviously beating them as well, because we're not like them, but you want to keep pushing forward and doing everything you can. So when it comes down to it, you can boil it really down to you have this elite defense coming back. Majority of the guys, and obviously there's a few high level guys are gone, but there's still a large portion of it's there. Wink knows what he's doing. That's great. You totally upgraded offensive coordinator Chip Lindsey coming in from UNC, and you just got a laundry list of guys that are looking to improve on what they were. You brought in a bunch of guys to help that out. Obviously, Bryce Underwood's kind of where it starts and ends. Jordan Marshall and Justice Haynes doing great things. Donovan McCulley bringing in. Babalo might start on the offensive line, trying to revamp that O-line to what it was. That was a major issue last year and kind of spawned a lot of problems. That the quarterback play and the offensive coordinator. There's a lot of debacles, and you think you've pretty much addressed almost all those concerns. I don't know necessarily about the offensive line as much, but you brought in a lot of young guys that going forward it's not going to be an issue. We're not going to be playing guards. We're not going to be playing a center and 4 guards anymore. We're really moving forward, and it's something that you love to see. So, you just look at this season, and you could boil it down and be like, hey, we're putting all of our faith in this freshman quarterback. It is what it is. I've long been saying that in the offseason, I was kind of like, hey, I don't really mind if we go 10-2, 9-3, as long as Bryce throws the ball a ton and you get to that nice balance that Chip Lindsey has brought at almost every place he's gone to of significant volume of passing and rushing. Like, I want Bryce to almost break the Michigan single season passing record this year. And if you start doing that, you're going to get these receivers. You were in on a lot of high level receivers, guys like Calvin Russell and a few other guys. But, you even think about it. Who in the right mind would want to go to Michigan right now as a receiver? Obviously, I'm very biased, but, you can look at it from an objective point of view. They ran the ball and played defense, and you neutered even your quarterback, JJ McCarthy. Everyone will just say Bryce Underwood came because of the money. It's significantly more than that, but obviously it helps. And I'm glad these kids are getting the money, but you have to spend and compete at the highest level on top of what you already would have had to do to recruit these kids to get them to come to Michigan right now. So if you start throwing the ball, that's very important. Obviously, I'd rather win games. I have no problem winning games like it was at Penn State. I just want to win the game. If you could tell me how I could choose to win the games, if it was Bryce kind of airing it out and then getting a little swagger or aura and building off of that into a great recruiting class, getting some of these elite receivers, Dakota Garant and a few others coming up down the pipeline, whether it be in-state, out-of-state, national level guys that you're actually in the fight for it. You kick the tires on Chris Henry Jr. A little while back, earlier in this year. Not this year. Yeah, it was like in this time last year almost. And it's like, what are you doing? It's an Ohio State receiver. Of course, our receiver's going to Ohio State or Michigan right now. You're out of your mind if you're not doing that. You're seeing what Jeremiah Smith's doing. So you got to get to that level. And that's going to take time, take trust. Ron Bellamy's working his ass off. He obviously helped Bryce big time. And you just hope what you're building in this foundation really gets that point there. So, yeah, I just wanted to stress how important this season is. I think that there's a good possibility you could see yourself in the Big Ten title game. I think there's a very good possibility you could see yourself in the playoff. It's obviously not favored to happen, but I could definitely see it happening. I mean, I said yesterday in my video, I could see us going undefeated, 11-1, 10-2. And you're just gonna have to build on the momentum from the years prior, and the end of last year, kind of ignore what happened in the middle. And I think you got pretty solid footing. We talked about it in the video yesterday. Oklahoma, Nebraska, USC. Those 3 games early in the season are really going to define your season. And if you take care of business on those games, let alone all 3, but if you get 2 out of 3, and then, you could even lose to Ohio State and still make the playoffs. Obviously, you don't want to, put that in the air, but you can go 10-2 and make the playoffs nowadays. And, if you get a big road SEC win or you beat a good USC, or surging, I guess you could say, USC team on the road, those are big wins. Nebraska, I think, is the easiest of those games, but hopefully it doesn't come back to bite me. But you boil down those 3 road games plus Ohio State. Those are your big 4. If you go 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 4, obviously you're in the playoffs of 4 out of 4, but even 2 out of 4, that's kind of all you need to get in the playoffs nowadays, and just take care of business every other game. You're supposed to favor to win, and we're in the playoffs again, and that's a great building point onto next year. Success not only helps potentially kids coming, but it helps the donors be like, okay, we're seeing a return on investment. We had no quarterback. We went from JJ to whatever the hell we had last year into Bryce Underwood, and we're back in the playoffs. We have a quarter every year. We've had a quarterback. We go to the playoffs. It's that simple, and that'll help with recruiting guys going forward, whether it be Elijah Haven, Malachi Ziegler, keeping a guy like Brady Smeagol, or Donald Tabron a few years down the line. It just helps, building and stacking quarterbacks and stacking classes and these offensive linemen. Obviously you did Babaloa and Haywood last year. Build on it more. Keep getting these high level linemen. You can flip guys that are still there. You got guys like Malachi Lee. Can you flip a Turntine? Things like that. And we'll get more recruiting going forward. But just building on the momentum that you've already had at the end of last season is so essential. And making last year an anomaly for Sherrone Moore is great. So I think it's an extremely important season, not only for the future of Michigan, the future of Sherrone, the future of high-level donations to the program and stuff. I mean, I don't know if that'll ever stop, but you start seeing a nice return on investment of Bryce Underwood, you'll be able to pony up for guys like Xavier Hyder, guys like Elijah Haven, guys like Malachi Ziegler, and it goes on. And it's, you just got to keep pushing, got to keep building momentum, and, never rest, never take it easy, because I think Michigan kind of took a little easy in the offseason, the year after they won the title. But it's easy to look back on it now and be like, I'll trade anything for that title. And I've said it many times, I'm sure. So that's all I have for now. Let me know down below if you agree this is the most important season Michigan's had and maybe ever. And yeah, thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for the support on the channel the last few days, and hopefully we keep this momentum going and pushing into the rest of August. And football's almost upon us, so we've almost made it through the doldrums of the off season, going through soccer, tennis, WNBA, MLB, all that nonsense to get to football. Oh man, thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.